Okay, so I am just continuing on with my metabolic damage series. In this video, what I'll do is basically break down how I went about rehabbing my body, and more specifically talking about what I did programming wise. So what I did with my weight training, what I did with cardio, and also some nutritional experiments my coach and I worked on together. So that is kind of what I'm gonna basically break down for you in this video, okay? Okay, so first things first, I do want to mention that before I tried all of these other, elements to my program, I did seek out professional help. So, I did consult with a nutritionist. We did a bunch of food sensitivity tests. We did a blood panel test to test my hormone levels. I consulted with a friend and we did some thyroid typing tests. I went to specific certifications that had information regarding me kind of tracking my fasting blood glucose levels, my temperature before and after eating. So there was some other elements that I did do prior to what I feel helped me the most.
These next few slides are just some of the results I had gotten back from the blood panel and food sensitivity tests I'd done. You'll notice that the ones marked in red and highlighted were where I stood outside of the healthy norm, which were my morning cortisol level as well as my thyroid hormone. This next picture is just showing you the food sensitivity test results. They were categorized from severely intolerant, moderately intolerant, mild intolerance, and then the acceptable foods list. They also broke it down into vegetables, fruits, meats, dairy, seafood, grains, herbs and spices, and nuts and other miscellaneous foods. And this last slide just shows my suggested supplement list. I was suggested to take licorice, fish oil, zinc magnesium, a probiotic, and a GI Revive powder, and also vitamin D. All of these supplements were essentially to help my body heal from the inside out. The end result after taking those supplements for about 30 days, as well as altering my intake and eating according to the food list, I didn't necessarily see a tremendous improvement in my energy levels. I was still feeling at best roughly 60% of how I used to feel.
Before you start any program, one of the first things that most coaches will do is basically find your starting point. So it's really important for you to take a lot of notes currently. So what is your body generally feeling like? I do encourage you to tap into what does my body feel like right now? One of the most important things that you can do as well is to track, take notes, journal, and do all of those things as consistently and as often as you possibly can. You want to pay attention to your energy. You want to pay attention to, how is your body feeling day to day? What are you craving? What is your weight fluctuations? All of those things are just information that can be utilized further down the road. And as you work with your coach, you can slowly start making tweaks to your program so that they reflect more positive changes going forward.
I just wanted to show you an example of some of the notes that I was taking as I was going through this process. Each week I kind of roughly took down notes of how I was feeling, what I ate, if I had gone out to eat, and in general, just how my body was responding to nutrition. Again, these notes were utilized within the program. This is just an example of how I went about tracking. So I noted the date, I noted my energy level using the RPE scale of 1 to 10. I wanted to make note of how many hours a night I was sleeping, from what time was I going to bed to what time was I waking up. If I had any cravings, if so, for what, and approximately what time, my overall mood throughout the day. If I had any soreness, did I train that day? Did I do any cardio? What my hydration was, and you can also note your weight. I combined this type of tracking with journaling, where I, again, wrote about every week just an overall recap of how my body was feeling.
Okay, so the general rule of thumb, if you're going through something like metabolic damage, is that oftentimes less is more, in particular with exercise. So in often cases, you know, when you're coming off of a show and you're dedicating your life to the gym, you're dedicating your life to prep, it is unusual to think that if I cut back on exercise and cardio, that I'll actually start feeling better, that I may even lose weight, that I'll, you know, have more energy, all of those things. So, you know, when you're factoring what your body and the state that your body is in, it is very reactive, it is very sensitive. So you want to basically give it time to rest, give it time to recover, and give it time to repair itself. All of those three things happen when you actually reduce the amount of time you're spending in the gym. So, you know, in my particular case, whenever I started to implement cardio back into my program, I actually started to see a negative response. With all the notes that I was taking, I started to see that there was a trend with how I would respond to doing cardio. And that trend being, I would have to go back to sleeping 12 plus hours a night. I would wake up feeling achy, my joints would hurt, cravings would increase, I actually would put on weight. And those were all of the general things I started to see when I would implement cardio again into my program. There was a point in my program where I was so frustrated, I was so tired of being tired, that I finally kind of let go of cardio and I took a full week off from doing any slow, steady cardio. I actually ended up losing about 5 pounds. And so that further reminded me that, you know, the less is more principle is gonna probably benefit me the most on my way to recovering. The same thing factored in when I worked out, so when I was weight training. I would go into the gym and I would think I would want to train really, really heavy, and I had the desire to train really heavy, but anytime I trained upwards of closer to even just 70% of my effort, my max effort, I would have the same response. I would start to have cravings again. I would need to sleep more. My mood would drop. My body hurt. I would gain weight. I was basically in the gym to heal myself, and that required me to just spend 30 minutes at a time working out, you know, doing anywhere from 2 to 3 sets of 10 repetitions of maybe just 5 exercises. When I worked with my coach, you know, we looked at how my body was responding to exercise, to cardio, to even foods, and basically adjusted it week to week depending on how I was feeling. Okay, so one element of, you know, this road to recovery that I do want to emphasize is that I had to tap into, you know, what I actually genuinely enjoyed about working out. You know, when you're competing and you're so focused on getting on stage, being in your best condition, I think it's very common for us to lose sight of why we originally started to train for these shows and why we originally started to, or why we originally trained in general, you know. I think we lose sight that, you know, exercise can be fun. Exercise and movement is enjoyable. Being strong is a wonderful thing. So when you're going through this process and recovering your body, you know, look at elements of your program that you're doing and ask yourself, do I genuinely enjoy this aspect of my program? You know, for example, I thought I enjoyed slow, steady cardio. And when I sat back and thought about it, you know, I broke down why did I enjoy slow, steady cardio. And the reasons why I enjoyed it was because it was a break in my day where I could just listen to good music, I could zone out, and I could have some time for myself. And what I did with all of that information is I basically tried to think of specific hobbies that I could utilize those same benefits that wouldn't necessarily, you know, damage my metabolism even further. I urge you to look at elements of your program. What do you enjoy about weight training? What do you enjoy about cardio? What do you enjoy about eating clean or prepping your food? And then break down those reasons why and think about how you can transition some of those reasons into everyday activities, into everyday hobbies. The things that you fuel your body with and fuel your soul with are so important. And I promise you that those things will also help aid in your recovery towards bettering your body and bettering your metabolism and bettering your overall health. You know, working with my coach, one of the things that he emphasized so much was he wanted me to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And by that, I mean, throughout the journey, we did a lot of experimentation. We worked together figuring out, how did this feel? What should we tweak from there? And so like I mentioned earlier, all of the notes that you're taking in regards to stress, recovery, working out, how your body is changing, all of those notes that you're taking essentially can be tweaked, and then you can further experiment with certain elements of your program and then make adjustments from there. Some of the experiments that Mark and I worked on were figuring out, what my tolerance was for carbohydrates. We spent a week having me, ramp up my carbohydrates, and then looking at progress pictures, looking at energy levels, looking at overall how my mood was, and then figuring out, okay, is 225 grams of carbohydrates too much for me, or is it too little? We played around with fat intake. We played around with, pre and post workout meals. What does Alyssa Chang's body do best with? And that is what I really want to encourage you to do as well, is when you're recovering, to play around with certain elements of your program. Have a coach that can help support you and give you a different perspective on how he or she sees your body adjusting to the different stimuluses. Again, so one thing that I do want to share with you is basically what my program kind of looks like right now. My weight training sessions last anywhere from 35 minutes to maybe 80 minutes. An 80-minute training session is usually probably after I've had a lot of food the day prior. I'm big into intuitive eating and intuitive training. So if I walk into the gym and I don't feel great, I'll end up leaving after 20 minutes if I don't feel great. My program kind of revolves around those same principles that I adopted and learned about when I was recovering. Because of the damage and the stress that I put my body through in prep 6 years ago, I am still very susceptible to overtraining. And that is basically me exhibiting some of the same symptoms of having cravings, my weight going up, being achy, having to sleep a lot more. So I am definitely training more for maintenance. I'm training more for what feels good for my body, what I enjoy doing that day, and very intuitive. One of the last things I do want to say is thank you. Thank you for watching my videos, and thank you for watching this video in particular. I know that some of the, things that I'm mentioning about how, I removed cardio and I cut back on weight training and all of those elements, it's definitely hard to hear, especially when you're coming from the position of coming off of prep. I can relate because I was right there with you. The thought of removing cardio and tapering off exercise or taking even just a day off was a lot of information to hear that I didn't like to hear. I was really attached to exercise. I was really attached to cardio. I had a lot of fear around what would happen if I cut out cardio. What would happen if I took out a weight training exercise or a weight training session for that day? There was a lot of anxiety surrounding all of those unknowns. And, it's not until I got to the point where I was so frustrated and I was so tired of waking up exhausted and not feeling like myself that I was willing to make those adjustments and take those risks. And I had to get myself to a point of frustration where I was willing to do anything to make myself better. So again, I appreciate that you're listening to this video, and if I can offer any more advice or any more tips on how to help you recover, you can comment below, you can reach out to me through email. So again, thank you very much. I'll be back to break down those other elements of the video prior to this and talk a little bit more in detail about those things. But other than that, a huge thank you again, and I will talk to you all very, very soon.